And we'll go straight to tonight's agenda. And apologies for absence, please, Clerk.
Just from Councillor Jamie Mackay, Chair.
Jamie McCauley.
McCarthy, sorry.
Thank you. Yes, and that's quite all right. Thank you very much. And any declarations of interest, councillors, on any items which appear on the agenda tonight?
No.
No.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, item number 3, minutes of previous meetings, Town Council meeting of the 20th of April 2020. Can I have a proposal, please?
Yes,
Could I
I'll
have a
propose.
proposal that the correct record? Thank you, Councillor Cockett. The seconder, please.
Okay. I'll
Gillian,
second
thank
that.
you very much. Yeah. So we take that as no dissenting voices. Good. Right. Straight to the clerk now and the finance report. David, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just for 1 month of the new financial year, of course, the month of April, the balance at the end of April, which is our reporting date, was 465,569. The bank accounts, both of them, have been successfully reconciled to that date. During April, we paid out £34,523, with 1,431 attributable to Salisbury Gardens. The usual full list is attached for members. Receipts during the month total 379,967, of which 6,784 was the total of Salisbury Gardens rent received during the month. The full 2021 precept was received, which is what accounts for the increased size of bank balances. That was a total of 360,589. During the year, we also received the precept-related grant from the Isle of Wight Council of 2,587. We also received the VAT reclaim for Q4 of the last year, in a total of 2,659. And the other element of some significance in the receipts is the £5,000 Community Emergency Shopping and Delivery Fund from the Isle of Wight Council. The usual list of payments and receipts against budget lines for the first month of the year is attached. Payments in the period 9,701 under budget, and receipts £81 under budget. Thank you, Chair. That's all for my report, unless there are questions or comments.
Thank you. I'll go around the virtual room. Clark, thank you. Councillor Cockett, do you have anything? Nope.
Nope.
Councillor Logan? Councillor Bond?
No.
Councillor Watling?
No comment from me.
Councillor Mack?
All right.
Councillor Milford?
All okay
Welcome,
with me.
Steve.
Welcome.
Councillor Toogood?
No, no comment from me.
And Councillor Backhouse Fry?
Well done, as usual. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And now we go on to item number 5, which is the internal auditor's report.
Sorry, Chair, I just need you to
Beg your pardon.
accept the report, please.
Oh, I do beg your pardon. Yes, sorry. Okay. Could I have a proposer, please, that we accept the report as written?
Yeah, I propose to accept it.
Councillor Milford, thank you. Seconder, please.
I'll second it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Logan, as usual, we'll take it unless there are any dissenting voices, then that's a unanimous vote. Thank you, Clark. I hope that satisfies you.
Thank you.
And item number 5, to consider the internal auditor's report. Back to you, Clark. Thank you.
Yes, this is the annual requirement for the internal auditor's report on the work that he does. This is Gareth Hughes, who was appointed internal auditor, and his report is, as far as I'm concerned, satisfactory. He's also indicated his willingness to remain as the council's internal auditor for the 2021 year, if you're happy to.
No.
Sorry.
You're happy to.
With the dog.
Yes. So I've really nothing else to add, apart from the fact that it always strikes me as curious every year, and newer councillors may not be aware of this, but the fee that Gareth gets for his work is £350, and he's the only one of the 2 auditors who actually looks at the records. He sees bank statements, as you'll have gathered from his report. He's free to ask for invoices at random, which he's been supplied with. He looks at the council's minutes for the year. He actually does look at documents. The external auditor just sees the annual return with the 7 or 8 figures on it, and the external auditor is paid £950. It's a curious balance, but anyway, I think that's it for me, Chair.
Thank you. Any comments from councillors? We'll go around the table again. Councillor Pocket?
No, if there was nothing extraordinary and nothing unusual, if it's completely standard process as it normally is, then I'm satisfied with that. Nothing extraordinary, no?
No. Thank you. Councillor Logan?
I would concur with that, Councillor Cockett. I'm quite happy.
Councillor Bond? Thank you.
No, all good.
Councillor Worthing?
All good from me, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Mack?
All fine.
Councillor Milford?
Yeah, all good for me.
Thank you. Councillor Toogood?
No, all good for me, thank you.
And Councillor Backhurst-Fry?
Perhaps we should write him a letter of thanks for his very good work on our behalf. Thank you.
You mean to the auditor? You mean?
No, the one that we only pay a measly 250 quid to.
Oh, there's nothing measly about that. Very
That's a
generous.
good job, well done.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we go to recommendation. Members are recommended to agree that the internal auditor's report be accepted and Gareth Hughes be thanked for his thorough preparation of it, as Dealing has just kindly pointed out. And number 2, that Gareth Hughes be appointed as the Town Council's internal auditor for 2020-21. We'll take those together. Could I have a proposal, please?
I propose that, Stuart.
Thank you, Councillor Toogood. And seconder, please.
I'll do that.
Councillor Backhurst-Fry, thank you.
Thank
We'll
you.
take that.
Yeah.
We'll take that as unanimous. Thank you, Clark. And we move from there to the general, to item number 6 in the agenda, general power of competence, not competence, competence. This is something that is usually done at the annual meeting, but as the clerk will explain in a moment, there is no need for us to have an annual meeting this year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So we brought it to this meeting. Clark?
Thank you, Chair. As Councillor Cockett said about the previous item, this is relatively routine. I'm able, as the paper says, to assure you that the Town Council meets the criteria for continuing to exercise the general power of competence. which is just as well. But we do, and therefore you are free to pass the recommendation in paragraph 3, should you choose to do so.
Thank you. Yeah, it's fairly short and sweet, but we'll go around the table just to see if there's any comments. I wouldn't think so. Councillor Cockett.
No comment, thank you.
Councillor Logan.
Oh, I'm good, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bond.
No, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Watling.
No comment, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mack.
All good. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Milford.
Yeah, I think we should agree to it. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Toogood.
No comment. All good.
All good. So we can take that as read. Thank you, Clark.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving swiftly on. Number 8 on the agenda. Sorry, I do beg your pardon. Number 7, how very remiss of me. And I'd like to welcome Tony McCarthy to the meeting tonight. Thank you very much for attending virtually, Tony. For this, but as you're an officer, and because Jason has been involved in this, I'll ask Jason to lead on this, and then if Tony, if you could very kindly come in when Jason has finished. Jason, do you have anything you'd like to open this discussion with?
No, not really. I think you can go straight to Tony. Yeah, I can fill in where needed. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Mack. Tony, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, councillors, for inviting me along to the meeting tonight. I think the last update you had was at the last council meeting, and things have moved on quite considerably since then. I just realised today that this will be our 9th week of running with volunteers supporting prescriptions and shopping locally in Ventnor with our group of volunteers. And so far, you've seen the report, but I've just looked at the database, and we've done 485 separate pieces of work, and I reckon it's around with 300 or so people. We've got an incredible team of volunteers, 40 general volunteers and 19 people doing the invaluable task of ringing round and checking in with people, seeing if they're okay. And we're getting an awful lot of our current casework through them, i.e. people are being rung round, do you need shopping, do you need a prescription? But it's also alerting us to people that are very isolated. So over the last few weeks, we've had at least 6 people where somebody's been worried about them, they haven't answered the phone. So I know this morning Jason went round to knock on somebody's door, and I think some of the other councillors have done a bit of that as well, where people are worried about somebody in their locality. So one of our volunteers will go around and just check that they're okay. Sadly, we've come across a few cases where there are quite serious safeguarding issues with individuals who are in real poverty and really dire circumstances, and we've referred somebody to the adult. Alison referred somebody to the adult safeguarding team, who are very, very concerned about their lifestyle and the way they're living. So that's something that we may have to use again in the future. I just think it's very fortunate we have such able and capable volunteers from all walks of life, from all backgrounds, from our local community groups, our faith communities, a real wide stretch of amazing talented people. I think we're very fortunate to live in a town where those people are just all happy to volunteer and help out. We started to pick up having to collect prescriptions from St Mary's. We've collected 5 of those over the last 2 weeks. What I also perhaps would add is that the Boots queue is now more manageable. Boots are now allowing 5 people into the shop at any one time. There's no need for people to manage the queue as there was at the beginning. And also, since we last spoke, we have managed to deliver a leaflet right the way across the town. You've probably seen the leaflet, but it's gone to every address in Ventnor. There's a stack of them at the checkouts in the co-op as well, so people can pick them up. And since we last spoke, I think since the last report, the last council meeting, with our volunteer support and with Jason, is to get the post office to open 3 days a week from 10 till 2 on Mondays, Thursdays and Fridays. And it was somewhat reluctant for the post office to open, but they are keeping going with our volunteers staffing the door and managing the queue a little bit. That seems to be, they're carrying on with 3 days a week, which is a boon, I think. And we haven't had massive queues there particularly. It seems to be working reasonably well. So, I mean, that's it. This is week 9. I don't know how many more weeks of this we've got to look forward to. But I would like to say a huge thank you, particularly to Alison and Morgan and to the Town Council for their support during these very, very difficult times. But I think we're very fortunate to live and work in a town like Ventnor, where there is a real strong sense of community. So that's it, really. But happy to take any questions or listen to any observations.
Thank you very much, D20. Yes, I would agree with what you said about the great work that the staff at Salisbury Gardens are putting in behind the scenes. Could I just take you back to before I open it up, to the post office? You said they were a bit reluctant to even open for the couple of hours over 3 days. There's no animosity, is there, between them and customers, or between officers and the people in the post office? Are they taking it in good spirit?
They seem to be. I mean, I think they both, the guys that own the post office, one of them's got fairly serious health conditions, which is why they were so reluctant to open in the first place. But I think they're gradually getting used to the idea of it opening 3 days a week, and they do what they need to do, and it's a really valuable resource to have. And you know, we often forget that there's a post office down the road in St Lawrence who've been open all the time and really serving their community, really, and do a wonderful job. And I think we're all a bit shocked when the post office shut, but I mean, it's really good that they have decided to open, and with our support are able to continue doing it. So yeah,
that's great, Tony. And as I said to you at the group meeting the other day, and I think you alluded to as well then, although not so much today, Tony, something the council officers might have to think about, and I think it was alluded to in the report, going forward. We don't know how long this is going to last, but at the same time, we see there is a need for this, and that need might outlast the pandemic, as it were. So that's in your thoughts as well.
And absolutely, definitely, Chair. I think it just shows what you can achieve with volunteers, and volunteers are obviously very focused on this particular crisis at the moment. But in the future, I hope that the Town Council will continue to work with these very many capable people in our community if they're able to volunteer their time in this way. And this sense of sort of neighbourliness and strength of community really comes through when you talk to our volunteers and why they're doing it and why they're committed to helping their neighbours and things. So it's very, very impressive. I think it's something perhaps the Town Council should look at the future as working more closely with groups of volunteers.
Yeah, I agree with you entirely when you say that. I mean, I suppose it happens in other communities as well, but Ventnor always seems to be at the forefront of these initiatives, and it's a great testament to the public spiritedness of all of our community, really. Jason, do you have anything you'd like to bring in?
No, not much more than that. Other than there is, I certainly know within the volunteer cadre, shall we call them, that they're very much looking forward to working with Town Council and continue to do so even after this might go. So, you know, there's very much an opportunity there for some type of ambassadorial town team, if you like. You know, I mean, take away the titles of the past and have it for the benefit of the town. Absolutely.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I agree with you. Okay, around the table. We'll start with Councillor Backhouse-Fry this time.
Well, I'd like to put on record that Sharon and Peter and our volunteers out here have been absolutely fantastic. And this is good, isn't it? And I just wish that somehow or other we could extend this into Upper Ventnor, because I feel so badly that they really do need a lot more help than they get. And as to what you're saying, this could be a way to do it. Finally, for them.
Yeah, good. Tony, do you know anything about the situation in Upper Ventnor particularly?
Sorry, can you hear me? Yeah, I can. Sorry, Chair. We've had quite a number of volunteers who come from and live in Upper Ventnor, so that community has been well represented amongst our volunteer base. Some of our most active volunteers are from Upper Ventnor. The lady who helps out on the post office on a Thursday is a Upper Ventnor resident, and there's a number of people in Upper Ventnor. So I think it's I think what I should have mentioned, I do apologise for not mentioning, is Morgan's fabulous analysis of where the cases have come from in the town, and it's really interesting. It's a piece of work that I highly recommend.
Yeah, I do think it's an opportunity for them, because Upper Ventnor does just get a bit shoved aside, doesn't it? And it needs a lot more help.
Okay, thank you for that, Ian. Councillor Toogood.
I just think we should agree with Tony, keep working with him afterwards. You know, we've got a relationship there, we should keep it going. That's my views.
It's something we've got to consider, Jim, I agree, but it's also true that, you know, we have to consider how our own staff are stretched as well, and the demands that it has and the manpower that we have at Salisbury Gardens. But it's something that we'll obviously be thinking about, talking about going forward, for sure.
We might have found a group leader, mightn't we, among them? There might be someone kicking in, like a group leader. Somewhere, isn't it?
Yeah.
Certainly
Worth considering. Sure.
Tony could pick that out, couldn't he? But you know, Tony, wouldn't you?
But I think it's a good point, Jim. But I think so many of our volunteers are involved in other community groups that are kind of a bit moribund at the moment. We've got a lot of people who are part of the Artists Collective, a part of the Shed, a part of other groups who work in the town. And when they're back in operation, it might not be so easy for them to give their time to this particular cause when there's other things called for attention. I mean, I have to say that local faith community, particularly the congregation of St Catherine's, have been absolutely astonishing, the number of people who've got a connection with that and have got involved. So again, when it's over, perhaps they'll be more concentrated on their own faith community. But there is always, I think there's a real, I do agree that this presents a real opportunity for the future.
Good, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Councillor Milford.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to add my congratulations to Tony and his team, and hope that we can continue to provide some support. It seems invaluable what we've been able to do. I'm just conscious that as a local authority employee, all of us have safeguarding responsibilities, even though and I was a finance person, I don't do adult children safeguarding as a day job. But if I ever came across a resident who came across a safeguarding issues, I would have a duty to pursue it. I just wondered whether town councils have any such duties. It's been interesting.
Fine. Tony, do you have an answer for that? Very good point.
Our youth team have all got quite advanced safeguarding training. I've done safeguarding training. There's lots of free training available both by the Adults Safeguarding Board and the Children's Safeguarding Board by the Isle of Wight Council, and it's really, really worth doing. If you're a councillor and want to do it, it's free and it's there and it's really worthwhile, so I'd highly recommend it.
Yes, well, just add to Councillor Milford's point, contacts with the safeguarding authorities are well established, mainly through Tony's youth work activity, where there are careful policies in place and referrals take place as required.
Thanks very much, Clark, for that. Okay. Steve, do you have anything you'd like to come back on there? Oh, that's enough. Thank you very much. Sorry, Steve, I didn't want to cut you off in your plan there, but Councillor Watling.
Nothing more to add there, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cockett.
No, I'd just like to add my thanks to all of the staff that are involved, and I'm sure Tony is also thinking about how we can make something great at the end of this, and I'm sure the council will be very receptive here. It's in, we know it's in good hands. So, thank you.
Absolutely, thank you very much, Councillor Logan.
Yes, and I want to add my thanks to Tony. That's another one. We talked at the community group last week that one of the things I see going forward with this, for a community hub to really move forward, it does need a base, and the discussions we've been having around the bus station could just provide that base. So I think that's something that needs to be, well, actively investigated at the very least, I would say. So, but again, thank you to Tony and his team. They've done a really stellar job.
Thank you very much. Thank you, David. Councillor Bond?
No, I agree with what the comments made already. Tony's done a grand job, and the safeguarding training is worth any councillor thinking about doing if you've got the time.
Yeah, very good idea. Thanks very much. I'll also bring in Ali and Morgan, if you don't mind, here, because they've been very much at the forefront of this. So, Ali, do you have anything you'd like to talk about, bring up, to highlight? View of the comments have been made.
I thoroughly enjoyed and continuing to enjoy dealing with our volunteers and customers, if for want of a better word, people requesting shopping and prescriptions. Things are quieter now and far more manageable. As Tony has said, the boots queue is much reduced, to the point that we've actually pulled the afternoon for that. But yeah, I'm thoroughly enjoying being able to help at this level. Is absolutely great. Just to add to what Tony said earlier on, we're also assisting with food parcel collections from St Francis School. There's 6 that one of our volunteers takes on a Monday at midday to people in the town. So it's really, really good. I'm really enjoying it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alison. Are you there, Morgan? Do you want to say anything? Thank you, Morgan. And just reiterate what Tony was saying about your analysis, which is extremely good. You've been working really hard on that. It's really a testament to the way you're pursuing things at the Town Council. So give yourself a little pat on the back of the head over that. It's really appreciated, the work that you're putting into it. Okay, thank you. David, I don't think we need to take any formal votes on this, but we just note that we will be monitoring this situation going forward. And obviously people, the 4 of you here tonight will have ideas about how we can take this. But I think you can take away from this that we as a council are very much positive about seeing if there's something that can be done on an ongoing basis, even when the pandemic's finished. Okay. Right. Moving on now to item number 8, Ventnor Car Parks 2019-2020.
Chair, this is a routine annual report because clearly from the time the Town Council took on responsibility in 2015 for 4 car parks, there was always a concern about the possible risk in terms of cost. So I've been reporting to the ASG fairly regularly and once a year to the Town Council. It's been waiting for the final figures from the Isle of Wight Council because we don't know how much money they've received to pay by phone until they do their sums and then tell us. But as you can see from the figures, it's a fairly significant amount of 6,662 this year. Interestingly, it's shown a 50% increase from last year. So people are using it more often than they did previously. So that reduces, together with some other deductions, and as I've said in the paper, we still don't know what those are for, but we don't mind. It's money off the rent. So the rent of 24,700 for the 4 car parks for the full year is reduced to 17,257. We also pay business rates for the car parks at a total of 4,209 this year. So the cost to the council has been a total of 21,466. And against that, Morgan, mainly with help occasionally from Alison, have collected from the coin boxes regular intervals, once or twice a month, depending on volume and time of year. That total of pay by from those coin boxes came to 19,494 in the year. The permits added 5,967, giving a total receipts of 25,461, which is 3,995 more than the costs. So in that sense, the council can be reassured that in spite of not increasing the charges since it took over the responsibility for the 4 car parks in August 2015, we have nevertheless more than broken even. The ASG, that has delegated powers by the mechanism of the power delegated by the town council to me, advised by the Assets and Services Group, has revisited the issue of whether an increase might be considered. And the group's last discussion of that last month was obviously waiting for final figures, which are now available. Thank you, Chair.
Well, thank you very much. I'm just interested about the phone take. Is that, you suppose, because the technology's got so much better? I remember trying to pay by phone. I can't remember the length of time ago, but I get really frustrated that I couldn't do it. So it's increased quite dramatically, according to your figures. I just wondered if it might just be something to do with the technology being better.
I think that's more due to you than it is to general public, Chair, but
and that doesn't know.
It's a 50% increase over the period, you're quite right. And whether that's more phones people have or whether there's more familiarity, I don't know. But it's encouraging because it's fewer coins for Morgan to carry to the post office.
Sure.
And it is very easy to do nowadays. It's just the first time that's difficult. Once you set it up on your phone, it's really easy.
It is.
Right. Okay. Morgan, you had your hand up. Did you want to? Oh, it's fascinating, really. Okay, so the recommendation is whether the council would like to look at an increase in charges or not. So, Councillor Logan, we start with you.
My thoughts are I'm reasonably quite happy where we are with car parking charges at the moment. The other thing that I'm not getting from this, what's actually happening with the car park fees due to the pandemic? Because I know we're not taking any money at the moment. It's just this been that the rent's offset against that.
Oh.
I mean, I know because there's no car parking fees coming in at all at the moment anyway. So, I mean, are we not? How do we stand with the car parks at the moment?
Sorry, Councillor, I'm not hearing you very clearly.
I think Councillor Logan's saying that because the Isle of Wight Council announced the suspension of car parking fees, what impact does that have on the council?
And we have all, I did email this, but we have also suspended car parking charges in R4, although not everybody, it seems, has noticed that because we've still collected some cash. And the agreement with the Isle of Wight Council is that they won't charge us rent for the period of the suspension.
That's what I was getting at now.
So there's no net cost. Check, Councillor. Thank you. Yeah, good question.
Thank you. That's very clear. Does that answer your question, Councillor Logan?
Yes, it does. I mean, as we stand, at the point with the car, I personally don't see the need to raise car parking charges, but at this point, when we've had them suspended for a while, if we're going to make a change, this is the time to do it.
Sure, I understand that. Yeah. Councillor Cockett.
Yeah, I'm also fairly happy that the situation is stable, and in fact, as it shows, there's a net surplus of almost £4,000, which is obviously a good thing. I'd be loath to increase the charges because nobody likes paying for parking. It drives people a little bit crazy. But to balance that, there's a very obvious need for the council to make revenue. So there's so many different factors here. There's the residents, visitors, short term, long term. There's permit holders. There's the needs of businesses, and so on and so forth. So I was wondering, I see that Andy Stafford, the parking consultant, is mentioned on the next report. Would there be a possibility to ask him to, if he is contracted to look at the item which is mentioned on the next report, would there be a possibility to ask him to review the town council's car parking situation? And does this decision need to be made now? Is it time bound in any way? So there's two questions there. Is it time bound? Do we need to decide now? And could Andy Stafford potentially look at this?
Okay, thank you, Stephen. David?
Shall I respond to that? No,
Yeah,
we can do it any time. I mean, the Isle of Wight Council would have to issue an appropriate notice, but they would do so if we asked them to do that. Andy Stafford will, of course, advise, but he charges, of course, and I don't. Well, it's a decision for the council. I can ask him for the cost of having another look at that, but I'd rather wait and see what happens with the next item before we did, would be my preference.
Yes, I'm in agreement with that. Obviously, it makes sense to potentially tag this on, depending if the council might decide that we don't do anything, but potentially it would make sense to tag it on with the next item rather than have it separately. I know that Andy's fees are fairly high, so it wouldn't be worthwhile to do it just for this. Agreed. But I'll be interested to hear what other councillors have to say.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. At this stage, I welcome Councillor Lucas to the meeting. Thank you, Brian. What we're talking about here is we're seeking councillors' views on whether we want to see an increase in tariffs in council car parks, bearing in mind that both Isle of Wight Council and Ventnor Town Council have suspended charging during the pandemic. Brian. No, I don't think Brian's hearing me.
Are you hearing me? Yes. Sorry, I'm having technological problems here.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Lucas. Did you hear what I said about?
Yes. I have no comment on it, really. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Thank you. Councillor Bond.
No, I agree with the others. Now is probably not a good time to be increasing the charges. I think if we're lucky enough to take control of all the car parks at some stage, I do think there is scope for looking at the tariffs as a whole and trying to sort out where we want the short-term parking and where we want the long-term parking. But I mean, we can't do that until the future of the car parks is sorted out. The one question I have was about the enforcement income and the enforcement costs. Is that reserved all to the Isle of Wight Council?
The Isle of Wight Council have retained responsibility for enforcement because we asked them to, given they're set up to do it, and they're happy to do it because it's self-financing.
So they keep any fines that are levied in our car parks. Okay.
Thanks, Councillor Bond. Councillor Watling?
I think there's a danger of us trying to decide our tactics before we've decided our strategy. What are we trying to achieve with car park charges? Are we trying to maximise revenue? Are we trying to keep 10% below what the Isle of Wight Council charges? What is it we're trying to do? Once you've decided what you're trying to do with car parking charges, then you can work out whether to put them up, put them down, or keep them the same.
Yeah, well, from my part, I agree with what Councillor Bond says, that our objective, our long-term, well, not long-term, medium to long-term objective, is to control all the car parks within the confines of Ventnor, and then, as you say, our strategy should follow from that.
Sounds gone.
Any further clarification on that, Colin?
Well, what are we trying to achieve? That's what I'm not clear. We can put them up, put them down, make them free. There's so many things we could do. I'm not sure what, as a council, we're trying to achieve with car parking. If you tell me what we're trying to achieve, I'll have an opinion as to whether we're going up, down, or sideways.
Okay.
Well, we're trying to achieve control of all the car parks, and then from that standpoint, then we're in a better position to adopt whatever strategy we feel, as Ian has said previously, whether we go, which ones we want to have long stay, which ones we want to have short stay, do we want to increase tariffs, decrease tariffs, season tickets. There's a big plethora of things we can decide at that stage. But it would be much easier if we controlled all the car parks, and that's one of our discussions with the council. Clark.
I can clarify for Colin, Councillor Watling, why we started doing it. And the original prompt for it was entirely due to the development of Salisbury Gardens, when we were at the time, and still now, very keen to control that in the ability to provide temporary permits for visitors and partners and anybody else who came to see us. It grew because we actually asked the Isle of Wight Council under the Localism Act to provide us with all 8 of the car parks. They refused. We challenged their decision because on the grounds that the grounds of refusal wasn't included in the regulations supporting the Localism Act. We have a barrister's opinion. He agreed with us, but the cost of a judicial review was beyond the budget of the time, so we didn't pursue that. Instead, a solicitor's letter went to the council, and they asked if we could find a compromise, and that's where we are now. The wider requirement is as the Mayor described it, because that opens up many more possibilities about the way in which the council responds to the town's tourism trade, as well as to the needs of its residents. So that's the background, Councillor Watling. I'm not sure it helps, but that's how it was.
The dreaded.
Can I add to that, Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
When we looked at the car parks originally, we were after a lot more flexibility in the way in which the car parks were used, because they were, Dudley Road car park, for instance, was very underused, and we had ideas that we would have car boot sales, fun fairs, all sorts of things that we would have there in order to make the life of the town a little bit more interesting and to get greater use out of those car parks. We haven't done that. We've just run it as a straight car park, and I think we've missed a lot of opportunities to make more use of those car parks. So that was part of the strategy, was to actually not just have a car park which was just a little bit cheaper, but to increase the use of it to the benefit of the people in the town, and to get greater flexibility in how you used it.
Yeah, I agree with you, Brian. In fact, we touched on that at the SWG the other day. The fact of the matter is that sort of, for whatever reason, took a bit of a back seat, but it's something that we ought to be exploring. Councillor Watling?
And we also need to
Hang
find PowerPoint places too, don't we? For the electric cars and bikes.
Oh, but the government made an announcement about that yesterday, Gillian. So
Well, no, but we've got to do something about it. It's all very well talking about things, as you just pointed out, Brian. We actually have to do them, and that would be a great opportunity.
I don't think the councils like Ventnor have the financial clout to install charging points in its car parks.
Well, you might very well have to eat those words in about 5 years' time when we're all on electric bikes.
Well, as I said, there was an announcement made yesterday that the government are making money available for that, but I don't know how much of that money is going to filter down to town and parish or even county councils. We have to wait and see.
Oh, I know where you're going, probably about 4pence, but Brian's right. We have to look at what we've got and make the best of it, and we should have done that actually. Yeah.
Colin.
Yeah, so just to finish off, it sounds like we do need our own strategy, what it is we're trying to achieve. Then all those good ideas about car boot sales and greater flexibility can go into that strategy. And then we can start managing the car parks to achieve what we're trying to achieve. And then the second bit of that, which is to go and get the rest of the car parks off the Isle of Wight Council, have we determined what it is we need to say to them to get them to agree? Have we worked out what our plan is there to get to agree with that?
We submitted a business case for managing all 8 car parks in December 2017, and we're still awaiting a response. The reason the Isle of Wight Council give for that is that they are still considering a draft parking strategy for the island, which was done for them by consultants in 2016, and they as yet haven't decided what to do with it.
They haven't published that report yet, but certainly that I've seen. And we have, on the many meetings that we've had, in fact, I think including the one we attended at County Hall, Colin, asked about that, but the answer there was none. They don't seem to be in any sort of a hurry, possibly because they want to hold on to the car parks that they still control for as long as they possibly can. But that goes in the face of the legal opinion that we've had, and if we could have afforded to take it to judicial review, as Clark pointed out, then we'd probably be having a different discussion now about it, but it just was beyond our budget at the time. And the council know this, and I think they're just drawing it out for as long as they can before they eventually have to come down and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. Because obviously, if Ventnor Town Council want to do that, then there are numerous councils in the Isle of Wight want to jump on the same bandwagon, and who can blame them? And the Isle of Wight Council don't want to do that.
Just to calibrate, what was the cost of judicial review?
Well, I can't remember off the top of my head.
We were told by the barrister that if we lost, it would cost the council anything up to 80k.
Okay. And then how much could we make if we owned all the car parks for 25 years?
Well, we weren't in a position to risk the 80k, certainly not at that time. And I doubt we are now. And in any case, we can't simply revert to that procedure. We would have to go through the Localism Act mechanisms again of the community right to challenge. And that takes over a year. For the mayor's information, in particular, given the time he's given to trying to get the town council to the Isle of Wight Council to move on this, and Jason's also been involved in those discussions, they've now removed it from their forward plan. So it's not on their agenda until the earliest September.
And also to compound that, our 2 local county councils don't seem to have any energy to pursue it on our behalf, for whatever reason. So it is a very difficult situation that we're in at the moment. Colin?
you either want to go forward with it, and the only mechanism that's been put on the table is the judicial review, or you don't, or you accept that you can't win it, and we just retrench to owning the car parks we do own, and we set up a strategy, including carbon sales for those. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry. I was waiting for something else coming there.
We can't go back to the judicial review without going through the process again. There was a time limit on challenge, and that was one of the other reasons why we didn't go ahead, because it was 2 weeks in advance of when the Isle of Wight Council got their solicitor's letter. So the judicial review is not an option as far as I can see. And in any case, it is risky business. In the end, there's no reason why we shouldn't win this, because the case is good, the arguments are clear, the strategy behind it is clear, and therefore they will have to come to the table at some point. And that needs political pressure. There's nothing else I think officers can do to progress that case. The work's all been done, it's on the table, it's on their table. It's just that they won't respond to it.
It's just that, or they're willfully ignoring it, which is, well, it's the same thing, really. And we really need to, to emphasise this fact to both of our local councillors who are supposed to be working for the same people as we are in this virtual meeting tonight. They're supposed to be working for the people of Ventnor. So let them show that they are doing that by fighting the case in County Hall to retain, to transfer ownership of all the car parks to the town council.
Oh, makes sense, doesn't it? Anyway, they've got bigger things to deal with. A £9 million hole in their budget. Then they'll have to think of something else, won't they? Or shall we? This is probably the hour to strike, actually.
Well, we have it in our hands to a certain degree, Dealing. Councillor Toogood.
Well, I agree with Councillor Brian, really, Lucas, that we haven't done what we meant to do with them, open the car parks up like different bits and pieces. So I think we've dragged our heels a bit there, but going back putting the price up, I think we've got to be careful, because if we leave it too low for too long, we're going to struggle to get it up to a decent amount. So I think we need to tread careful, wait to see what happens for the next item. But for the interest, we have got a price to put 2 charging points alongside the new toilets in the main car park.
Yeah.
You have a price already?
Yeah, I have, yes, yeah. Got a price there. Yes, we have, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
How it works.
Right. Well, I don't think that can be.
We need to look at that item, don't we? Really?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, Councillor Toogood. Councillor Milford.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Colm that we need to develop a strategy of what we want to do before we decide whichever way we go with prices, and certainly now would be the wrong time to change them anyway. Just got a couple of questions in terms of where we are now. Presumably our permit income has dried up, or do we have to actually offer anyone discounts for permits they've already bought? And also a question around the banking of the cash. Do we actually incur a sort of a bank charge fee from the post office for doing this?
Alison's probably the best to answer that.
No, they don't. We don't charge. We don't charge the post office. They don't charge us either. It's a free. They say that they benefit from having the cash available, and so they're very happy to take it. And we have approached them as to whether, I don't know if things have changed since we last asked them, but we did ask them if they will be prepared to cope with the cash from 8 rather than 4 car parks, and the answer was affirmative at that stage. Sorry, Councillor Milford, I've forgotten the other question.
It was around
the permit, whether there's any reimbursement for permits.
We've already agreed to postpone the permits for the period for which there's no charging. So we're not issuing permits for April or May at this time.
Thank you. Okay, Steve?
Because I
Councillor
was
Mack.
making 43, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, back to the recommendation then. No, not the right time to increase charges should we do so. You can see there's been a USP coming out of all this, and in line with a couple of councillors have already said, you know, this comes in line with the strategy, not only with car parks, but what the town improvements are as well. So I think it all goes together with that, really.
I go back to what the clerk said about talking to County Hall, to the leader, the deputy leader, and others, and maybe Chris as well. It's very difficult under the present circumstances to get them to do anything. I mean, I've written to them on various occasions over the last month, and I've had an automated response from emails. They're not getting into conversations with them. I don't know the reason, whether they're actually not going in, or whether they're accessing, or whether they're not accessing their emails. But it's a very, very difficult situation, and it's something that they're quite happy to fall back on and use that as an excuse, not to answer pointed questions. And it's just something that we've got to persevere. But going back to what both Councillor Milford and Councillor Watling and others said about the strategy, it's something that the SWG now has to get a grip of going forward. I quite agree with that.
I think it might be useful if Councillor Watling and others who've joined the council since 2017 had a copy of the business case, and that would answer some of the questions that are being asked here. So I can circulate that again, Chair.
Sure, very helpful, Clark. Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay with that, Councillor Watling?
Yep, fine with that.
Lovely, thank you very much indeed. Right. Back to more car parks.
Oh.
No, central
So,
car
sorry,
park.
the consensus here is, sorry, just for the clerk's benefit, for the minutes, and correct me if I'm wrong, councillors, that we are not minded now to increase car parking charges for the foreseeable future.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay then, Central Car Park Report 39-20.
Yes, Chair, this is following through on what the Town Council's previous discussions about that. As you can see from the background section of this report, it was agreed that we would be more proactive about the proposal to increase the number of car parking bays in the central car park by removing the boundaries and having another look at the way the car park is set out. That's based on the work Nick Cox did and the discussions the ASG have had. And so I was authorised to secure guide prices for the redesign and to open discussions with the Isle of Wight Council. I've only managed to do the second bit of that because the Isle of Wight Council took a while to answer the email request response that dealt with that. And we still haven't got prices either. But in the meantime, we've had an email from the Isle of Wight Council from Barry Cook, who is now classified as Senior Surveyor. Some of you will remember his previous role as Property Manager before he left the Isle of Wight Council to go to Wales, and has now come back into this role. I've quoted the relevant section of his response. So he's proposing that we ask Island Roads, or they ask Island Roads, for a price for doing the design work in the first instance. And I had assumed from previous discussions that the Town Council would not want a single quote from Island Roads, so I have approached Andy Stafford. For benefit of newer members, he was the one who did the original plan for taking over the 8 car parks. And that report's still available, and if anybody wants to see it, because it's full of ideas about what could be done if the town council had all 8. That was back in 2014. He's very happy to provide us with a quotation. He's asked a small number of follow-up questions, which I can answer. The response from Barry Cook is thoroughly disappointing. Chair, I need to say that because, as you know, having seen the full response, they are expecting the town council not only to pay for the initial design, which, as I've indicated personally, I don't have a problem with it, that given it's speculative and shouldn't cost a fortune, but he then wants us to pay for the works if there are any works to follow. And that's just ludicrous, given that if there are additional car parking spaces under present and future arrangements, that will be to the benefit of the Isle of Wight Council for the remainder of Barry Cook's life, the Isle of Wight Council's lifetime. So that's not acceptable as far as I'm concerned. But I would like to proceed with the 2 quotations as previously authorised. And rather than wait to get them to report back to the next town council meeting in June, I wondered if councillors might be prepared to authorise some expenditure, say up to 50% of the surplus from the 4 car parks, depending on what the quotations are, and delegate authority to me, advised by the ASG, to deal with the quotations when they come in. You're under no obligation to do that, of course, but if we're interested in pushing things forward, it seems a shame to wait a month. Although we may have to, given that we're waiting for Island Roads.
Yeah, we may have to wait. So just to bring Barry Cook into perspective, he took over from Tony Flower as property services manager at the time. Steve will remember that. So I think
he then lost his job to Ashley Curzon, Chair.
That's right. Yeah. Anyway, at least said about that, so it's mended.
David, you need.
Sorry.
If you're looking for.
Jim.
Sorry. Okay. I was saying, if you need to be looking for, you need to be talking to Crown Park, don't you? Because all Island Roads would do is give it to Crown Park to do, and they'll put their profit on it. That's where you need to be going, straight to Crown for a quote.
I always thought that they were both the same parts of the same company, but obviously I'm wrong.
No, Crown Park does all the work for it. So the bigger jobs Crown Park always do is you need to speak to Tyler for a quote, David, at Crown Park. Because that's who end up doing it, and Island Roads will put their profit on it, so-called management. Because that's who's doing a big roundabout.
But am I wrong, or we don't have to go to either of them in any case, do we?
Well, I'm quite happy to look for 3 quotes if that's what the council prefer, but given that the Isle of Wight Council have designated Island Roads, I've already asked them to proceed on that basis, so we will get a quotation from them and from Andy Stafford, and if the council decides another 3rd quote, it's absolutely fine with me.
Okay, thanks for that.
Mr. Mayor, I'm against us committing any expenditure on this central car park on top of a non-agreement from the Isle of Wight Council to give the car parks to us or lease them to us. It strikes me that we're charging on with expenditure which isn't necessarily going to be advantageous. I mean, there's a big risk impact, I think. I mean, us committing money only to find that the Isle of Wight Council want to hang on to the car parks because we know it's their cash cow. As they've only said that they're one of the few things that they can continue making money on. And we know that it's going to be difficult to prize the car parks away from them. And so for us to launch ahead with design and construction to make extra spaces, it doesn't make any sense at all to me.
I agree with Brian.
I don't think we would.
Just to go back to the last meeting, Chair, the reason for the council's agreement to proceed with quotations was that, assuming that the Isle of Wight Council don't actually agree to hand over the car parks, the reason for wanting to increase the number of spaces was, as the report says, to negate the need for them to charge additionally for toilets and to provide room for the inclusion of 12 free spaces if the town council decides to move some or all of the high street parking. So having that done is to the advantage of the Isle of Wight Council, true, but also to the advantage of the town council in the preparations for doing something at last about both of those things.
And I think we need to have tentative agreement from them that if we take that route, they're going to play ball in reducing our lost car parking spaces. At the moment, they don't seem to have said that, have they?
No, they haven't.
Well, they're not saying anything at the moment.
But there's no commitment in getting quotations, is there? It would just give us something to go on. I'm happy to
yes, commitment, no.
We have to have something to work from, don't we? In the event that we do move forward. Councillor Logan.
Yeah, I think this is a bit of an impasse. I think we're stuck between a rock and a hard place here, because if until such time as Isle of Wight Council decide to move, all bets are off, because nothing. We can't move forward until we get a response from the Isle of Wight Council. So the question to me is how do we make them move themselves? What tools do we have that would make the Isle of Wight Council engage with us? And I'm not sure that, you know, and I tend to agree with Brian slightly. I mean, until we've got a way that we see going forward, it could just be money, from good money after bad, if you like. You know? So my question from this one, and I don't have a pat answer to it myself, is how do we bring the Isle of Wight Council to the table on this one?
Well, I think going back to what the clerk said earlier, it's a political thing. I think it's we should be trying to bring as much pressure on the leadership of the council as we possibly can by whatever method we can, whether it's you know, council to council, whether it's going via the press, whether it's making our views known more widely, more generally speaking, whichever way. Because at the end of the day, Isle of Wight Council does own the car park, and if they decide not to move, then we go back to what we were talking about before about going down the legal route, which we'd already decided we couldn't afford to do.
At this point, I mean, where David had makes a very valid point, if it's the Isle of Wight Council's car park, they're liable for any works. I think we have to make that point. It's their car park, and therefore they have to pay for anything. But, you know, I mean, the point that we make is that when we're proposing something, to put a proposal to them to get the surveys done seems quite reasonable to me. But we need to see a way to move it forward. To my mind, we're at an impasse at this point, and I'm not seeing a way that this moves forward without everybody coming to the table.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing. Maybe we could get Barry to the table. But the thing about property services managers, have forgotten the meaning of the word service, don't they? Which is a big part of the title. Anyway, we'll move on to Councillor Bond.
No, I agree with the comments that have made already. I think if there's a timing opportunity for bringing pressure on the Isle of Wight Council, then I would suggest it's within 12 months. Given what's scheduled for 12 months' time, and it's probably something we want to discuss in private about how we best go about that.
Yeah, I agree. Councillor Cockett.
I'd like to say that I agree with Jim about seeking a quotation from Crown Park. I mean, we should respect his insight into the industry, and So I do think we should go directly to them if that's possible, David. I would prefer not to authorise the additional spending until we have those quotations in hand. Just a couple of observations about the situation. I really do think we're going to be waiting for the Isle of Wight Council strategy for a very long time. We can't pin our hopes on that. With regards to the payment for the work, the Isle of Wight Council, excuse me, they might have taken a look at the situation and said, well, we could increase the capacity, but we don't think we will increase the utilisation. So you could add another 20 spaces, for example, but is there a proven case that those 20 spaces will actually be utilised, will actually pay off? And I'm not sure if they would be. And I think, please correct me if I'm wrong, I think we're sort of dependent on sort of anecdotal evidence that some Saturdays in high season it's full. Are those Saturdays in high season when it's full, do they justify major works? So we do have to be cautious in that regard. What we know at the moment, what is guaranteed is that we need 4, again, correct me if I'm wrong, we need 4 spaces to ameliorate the addition of the public toilet. And so for those 4 spaces, you know, we can very obviously, we want to proceed with those, but we should move forward very cautiously regarding larger works. So in summary, please go, in my opinion, please go for the extra quotation from Crown Park, and let's get the quotations in hand before we authorise any further spending. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Mack.
Oh, sorry.
Well, hang on, Jim. Councillor Mack. Jason, are you there?
Doesn't seem to be.
No. Councillor Watling.
I agree with Brian. Unless it's ours, we shouldn't be spending Ventnor Town money on it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, I'm coming to you, Jim. Just be patient.
Sorry.
Councillor Milford.
Yeah, to listen to all the points that are made, I have to say I agree. There's not much point in spending out on a survey that's only going to increase the Isle of Wight Council's income, unless there's some understanding that that work could then be used to not charge us for the public toilet spaces that are then taken up.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, Jim.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about that. And I can't see what's the problem in meeting Crown Park with Nick's drawings and just say, give us a budget price. They wouldn't charge us for it. Why are we looking to spend money on a quotation at this stage? What's the point? Because it may be so dear that they would give us a budget price at no cost. Crown Park would, Tyler would.
Well, that's still a quotation, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's not. All we want is a budget price, isn't it? I can meet him on site when things get better, and I can get a budget price from him for nothing, using Nick's drawings.
Am I getting caught up in semantics here, Jim, or what? What's the difference between the budget price and the quotation? What's the difference?
A guide price.
Another one.
A guide price, basically, a quotation. Someone's got to go back and put pen to paper, and it takes a long time to do it, take your levels, etc. With that man's knowledge, he could walk around that car park and give me a budget price. Then you've got something between 2 figures. Then we've got something to work off of, haven't we? And it doesn't cost us anything. That's what, you know, that's how I would do it. So it's no cost to us at all. And we got a between price. And Nick's drawings are pretty good, aren't they? What he's done. I just can't see why we're spending money out when we no need to, when we could get done at budget price and nothing.
Well, I'm not understanding this. Maybe the clerk will clarify, but getting a quotation doesn't involve us in any expenditure, does it?
Well, it could do, couldn't it? So if you get an estimate, said, look, I want to draw it out myself, and I'm going to charge you for this quote. I think that's what David's talking about, David, aren't you? Paying for a price, Mr. B. I've lost it.
The town council decided that I should get prices from Island Roads and Stafford. So let's get a price from Crown Park as well. I have no problem with that.
Because all Island Roads, sorry,
in fact,
all Island Roads do is give it to Crown Park. Island Roads would give it to Crown Park and put in management fees on. That's what happens all the time.
Yeah,
well, we'll see that when the quotations. We'll see that when the quotations come in, then, won't we? I'll let you, David. I'll let you sum up in a minute. Bring in Dealey and Councillor Backhouse Fry.
Well, it's pretty illuminating, isn't it? I presume the public are watching this. Absolutely stunned amazement. The last time we had dealings with Island Roads, they ripped us off for 3,000 quid for a job that, by the way, my gang could have done for free. But you didn't want us to do that. And I have actually offered you the LiDAR for it as well, free. But I'm not prepared for us to go out and spend more money on this fatuous arrangement between, people, people you don't know. That's the Isle of Wight. How the Isle of Wight does it, is it, really? I mean, most people work in business. I don't think they really behave like that. I mean, we've got to be sensible about this. We really do. And as somebody pointed out, this is public money. It's not just, just something in a sweetie jar. We can't do this. This is not ethical. I don't think so.
Are you referring to the quotations or the spending of the money in any case?
There's a whole ethos. This is not the way things get done properly. We are a council. We represent the people. We don't do sort of deals with other people. No, we don't. And I think that's quite clear. And basically, if I want a quote from someone to do something at my house, I certainly wouldn't expect to have to pay them to come round. I mean, I expect them to come round and be a business person, really.
Well, that was
I think
what I was
Ingrams
saying.
doesn't operate like that.
Well.
Yeah, right. Well, and I know quite a few of the people that you've mentioned in my actual occupation. I have come across them, and I can tell you there's no way on earth that I would charge for an archaeological survey before we don't operate like that. That's not the way we operate at all. I think we've got to be jolly careful here, and it is our money,
I think
perhaps avoid councillors' blood pressure putting under any more pressure. I have authority to get the quotations. I'm proposing to proceed with that because that's the council decision. I withdraw any suggestion of spending any money until the next council meeting has the quotations before it.
Yeah, that's the way
Thank
to
you,
do it.
that's clear.
Yes.
So that's where I thought we were dealing originally, which is what my question to Councillor Toogood was about. Why would we be paying somebody to furnish us with a quotation? And as you've said before,
why would we do that? That's not the way ethical business works.
I don't know. I don't understand that, but that's not the way we're going down anyway. If they want to charge us for giving us a quotation, we wouldn't be asking them for the quotation in the first place.
Well, £3,000 later, dearie me.
Well,
No one should charge for quotation.
no, exactly. I think the £3,000 was in relation to something entirely different.
Yeah, I know, it's the same ethical view. It really is. We've just got to be careful. We really do.
Well, I just want to be clear here.
People will be watching this, won't they?
Yeah,
there will be people watching this.
So long as people are watching it, Councillor Backhouse, I just wanted to be entirely clear that the expenditure of the £3,000 for the topographical survey, which I'm assuming that you're referring to, was passed and minuted at a town council meeting. So there was nothing unethical.
You didn't expect to be charged £3,000, did you?
Well,
Yes, that's what we were told.
That's what we reported at the time.
You didn't get what you asked for. I mean, in my business, that's not what topical study is.
That's entirely subjective, and I'm not going to get involved in that argument here.
Okay.
So Okay, sum up, David. You're authorised to go for 3 quotations and not authorised to spend any money until the council has a further opportunity to see the
fine.
quotations and discuss. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much indeed. Right, where are we in the agenda now?
Boniface Fields, Chair.
It's in Boniface. Thank you.
This is just an update, really. I think members are probably aware, but for the record, I've written a report to the effect that we still operate the Boniface Fields under a tenancy at will. Discussions about a lease have been going on for nearly 2 years now. We thought it had been concluded in February of 2019. Following meetings with Tony Flower from St Catherine's School trustees, who had agreed with the town council. I think Councillor Toogood was there actually at the time, together with our architect and the senior surveyor from the Isle of Wight Council, Andrea Jenkins, and there was agreement reached that the St Catherine's School would retain a lease on the area around the games area, and various agreements were reached about access to Ventnor shed and so on. That seemed to settle things, but discussions between the St Catherine's School and the town council, and the Isle of Wight Council rather, of which I'm not aware of the detail, but clearly they had broken down because the Isle of Wight Council refused to include in the lease the right to renew at the lease term end. And Tony Flower informed the town council that St Catherine's School were not prepared to enter into a lease on those terms. The stakes were raised further when an email from Tony Flower indicated that if the Isle of Wight Council was unwilling to provide the right to renew, then the electricity supply to the fields that comes from the school grounds, though it is separately metered and the accounting process goes directly through us, not through the school, that supply would be cut off. And we were advised by the Isle of Wight Council to establish the cost of installing our own supply, which we did in the form of a quotation from Berry Electrical, just a few pounds under 11 grand. And so we indicated that wasn't an expenditure that made sense to us, given that the arrangements with the electricity supply work without any imposition on the school. So following several informal exchanges, the town council agreed to write to the chair of the school trustees, and the letter went on the 27th of April. A reply should be coming soon because we've been told that the chair, Elizabeth Bowen and Tony Flower, had a virtual meeting with the leader of the Isle of Wight Council on the 7th of May. However, we haven't yet had a reply. The other element of the report is just to make members aware that the membership of the Ventnor Community Shed has now just passed the 50 mark, and they have come forward with a range of proposed developments within the field area at no cost apparently to the town council, and they will discuss those initially with the meeting of the Assets and Services Group on the 26th of May to explore those proposals in more detail. That's the report, Chair. I think I have nothing else to add.
Thank you very much. We keep hearing the name Tony Flower being mentioned here, and you know, having a large spanner in the works. I wonder why it's taking so long for the results of that meeting to be made public, or at least not to be made public, but to be given to Ventnor Town Council, as we are one of the main interested parties here. Sorry, David, I was asking for you and why that's taking so
no idea
long.
what's going on in the background, and clearly we're just waiting, as far as I'm concerned, for a reply to the letter.
Hmm.
And you would hope that 4 weeks was long enough, but we're still waiting.
So what now? Then, if we wait again and we wait again, what now? So something's got to give somewhere. They won't issue the lease, which will remain unsigned.
Jesus. Yeah. Okay. So my computer's going to go in a minute.
Sorry, Jim, the expletive deleted. So it comes back to the leadership of the Isle of Wight Council again, doesn't it? Moving forward, just as it did in the previous item on the agenda. Okay, Councillor Logan.
Yes, I mean, I think you've just said it there. It comes down to the Isle of Wight Council again. We're waiting on them, or we're waiting on third parties. So I'm not really, you know, we're kind of stuck. I mean, until Mr. Flower and the town council can sort out the differences. I think we can only just try.
I thought the risk, sorry, Councillor Logan, to interrupt you just for the crack again. I thought the risk of Southern Electricity disconnecting the supply had been put in abeyance. Is that, am I right or wrong?
No, the sunflower is still standing by that. And that's all I know at present, as Councillor Logan accurately says. We're waiting for a response. The only way out of it, without agreement from the school, is for the council to agree to spend 11k to install its own power supply within the field itself. And that doesn't seem necessary at this stage.
No.
May become it's a ridiculous situation to be.
It is a ridiculous situation. For somebody else, for us to get hit with a bill for £11,000 because two other parties can't agree, it's not something I feel is particularly acceptable.
No, far from it. Councillor Lucas.
I was going to ask the clerk if we're in a limbo situation at the moment. There, everything's working. The allotments are growing lots of vegetables. The sheds and everything is working. So we're in limbo in legal terms, but is there any danger to us in this situation? Like, even though people are putting threats of cutting power off and nothing's signed, is there any disadvantage to us?
Well, the problem, the most obvious problem is that we can't apply for grant funding on the basis of a tenancy at will. So the lease does need to be signed as soon as possible, because the funding issue may become acute if the planners are committed to enforcing the terms of the current planning permission, which would require a move to permanent buildings rather than the current temporary ones.
Yes.
The sooner
So,
this is resolved, the
so it's
better.
an untidiness at this stage, legal untidiness, and I can see the danger to the planners. One of the other things I think is a danger is the sheds. If they start doing things which are too extensive there, the planners are going to object, because we're on a temporary arrangement, and they do see them as temporary buildings with a temporary permission. And we've got to be very careful we don't do too much work there that looks as if we're extending the site.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I mean, just to be clear, Councillor Lucas, the discussions I've had with the shed secretary they're very clear that whatever happens is dependent on the town council's decision, not on theirs. They won't do anything without permission.
That's good. But when it comes back to planning, then, as you said, and I think Brian confirmed, the planners are very loath to give planning permission to what they term a temporary building when they had sought assurances that these buildings would be made permanent down the line. Councillor Bond.
Nothing to add, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Cockett.
No, I don't have any comment. I just admire the tenacity for everybody who's working through this.
Thank you. Councillor Watling.
Nothing more to add, thank you.
Thank you. Jason, you there? Councillor Mack?
Hello, yeah, nothing to add. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Milford?
Nothing to add, thank you.
Councillor Toogood?
No, I've got nothing to add, thank you at this stage.
Councillor Backhouse-Fry?
But money is the root of all evil, you know. Be careful.
Well, yes, thank you on that philosophical note. Sorry, I've just dropped my paper on the floor, David. Are we looking for a vote here?
No, there's nothing to vote on, Chair.
Just for information only. Thank you. Okay. And now we go to the Town Clerk's report, which was circulated earlier.
Thank you, Chair. I know everybody's waiting for this report amongst all others. Just to record, for the record, the working from home arrangements are working very well. As far as the staff team are concerned, it's absolutely business as usual, and we're not stuck for anything apart from external sources, as Councillor Logan said earlier. This is also to record for the record the closure of the toilets based on Nick Cox's very detailed risk assessment and current increasingly national guidance. Well, it's not formal national guidance, but more and more authorities are closing toilets because of the risk of the virus being present in the atmosphere, because of the fact that people are not using the flush, and therefore the cleaners were having to do that. So anyway, they are closed and will remain so until further notice. The good news is the Putting Green reopened on Friday. Jackie is very clear about social distancing and who would dare disobey her, certainly not me. Yesterday, toilet, excellent work from Morgan in persevering endlessly with our water supplier for the Esplanade toilet. And thanks to Jim too, to Councillor Toogood, sorry, for his work in the background, because we've long suspected that the meters weren't working properly. And in the end, that's resulted in a credit of £7,735, which belongs to last year's accounts. In fact, it goes back further than that. But anyway, they've also agreed to pay the money. So that's all good news. Unusually, I've included an item looking for a decision from you in section 5. Because the May meeting is as usual very late in the month, being the third Monday instead of the second, and the June meeting is unusually early just by the consequence of the way the calendar has worked. So there are only 3 weeks between this meeting and the 8th of June. There will then be 5 weeks between the 8th of June and whatever the second Monday in July is. And consequently, it seems to make sense to move the June meeting back a week to the 15th and have 2 4-week spans, which is more time for things to develop rather than 3 weeks, given the speed in which external forces seem to work. And I've added the extract, the relevant extract from the new regulations the government introduced for these current circumstances, which gives town and parish councils authority to hold their meetings at such hour and on such days as they decide. They can also alter the frequency, move or cancel meetings without requirement for further notice. So if you choose to accept this recommendation, you have the power to do so. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Clark. And going around the table, we usually ask if you've any questions about the clerk's report. So if you could indicate during this time whether you support the postponement, or sorry, the rearrangement of the June date to June the 15th to equalise the time in between meetings. Thank you. Councillor Logan.
Yeah, first point, I would be in favour of the move to the 15th. And just one quick question. I mean, it comes from personal experience. I'm just going in and now starting to reopen my office. Is there any sort of thoughts on maybe reopening the town council offices?
I think I've mentioned before, Councillor Logan, that I heavily these days, well, not heavily, but find very useful the Society of Local Council Clerks Forum, on which all these things are being discussed quite a lot. And certainly the feeling there is that unless you can guarantee social distancing, including the behaviour of other occupants of the building besides the staff, then as you can work from home, you should work from home. And that fits with the government advice, obviously, as well. So.
Yeah, I'd be happy with that.
Thank you, Councillor Lucas.
Yes, as far as the meeting is concerned, that makes sense to have an even space. The one query I did have was what is the status of the workers that we've had to lay off who do the paddling pool and the safety and the beach, etc. How are we looking after these characters who cannot work?
Good question, Councillor. The people who service the paddling pool are not on contract, so they just haven't been working apart from being involved in some of the initial clearing out, but they're not working, so there are no costs incurred with that. The beach is still being cleaned, and beach safety will be in place now that people are accessing the beach more than they have been recently. So we've not been covering it thoroughly because it doesn't make sense to tie Brian Roberts up all day looking at an empty beach. So he's been released from that to other work. No staff have been furloughed because the furloughing arrangements, as I think you know, don't apply to public authorities.
Right, thank you.
Thank you, David. Councillor Cockett.
I don't have any questions, and I don't have any objection to moving the meeting.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bond.
All okay with me.
Thank you very much. Councillor Back-Try.
It's fine. Thank you very much for all you do, and we'll just carry on and support you.
Thank you. Councillor Toogood.
I'm okay with that, Stuart. Thank you. What Dean said.
Thank you. Councillor Milford.
No questions, and happy for the date to change.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mack.
No questions, happy with June 15th.
Thank you, Councillor Mack. Councillor Watling.
Was happy with June 15th.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. I'd just like to once again thank Tony McCarthy for giving his time this evening. Thanks very much for a very enlightening discussion, Ilona. If I could just press upon councillors, in view of what we said earlier about the shenanigans of County Hall, it might be helpful if you would all write as individual councillors to Dave Stewart as leader and Stuart Hutchinson as deputy leader, saying that we are not happy with the the way things are being handled on a basis of time. We don't want the goodwill between the two councils to be in any way compromised just because we're waiting on decisions that we believe the council could be taking and should be taking at the earliest opportunity. So I'll leave that to individual councils to decide if they want to do that, but I'm sure it would be very helpful if you did do it. Thank you very much indeed, all of you, for taking your time. I'd just like to point out that I'm in Thailand and it's 2:40 in the morning. So I'm going to bed. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right.
Good night.
Good night.